Whenever you're ready.
So our topic is death with dignity. And first, let me start off with a personal story. I'm from Washington State, and Oregon enacted their death with dignity law in 1997, making it the first of now 6 states to do so. Washington passed their version in 2008. In 1995, roughly a year before I was born, my dad was diagnosed with ALS. Now, ALS is a degenerative disease that slowly reduces all your muscle strength over the course of typically 3 to 4 years until you get to the point where you're paralyzed and unable to swallow, breathe, talk, or even move. However, your mental ability is left fully intact, and there is no cure. The symptoms get worse until you die. My dad's condition got worse, and his body function declined. My parents considered the option of physician-assisted suicide, or when a physician provides a terminally ill patient, like my dad, drugs in order to end their life. However, it would be another decade before Washington adopted any death with dignity law, and my dad ended up dying in April of 1998. Unable to walk, bathe himself, eat, drink, or even enunciate enough to be understood. The pain caused by mental illnesses is more than just physical. The knowledge that you are going to die and the indignities and loss of bodily function caused by many terminal illnesses, such as cancer, are mental and emotional pain. The Death with Dignity National Center says, suffering can mean more than pain, and there are other physical and psychological burdens. It is not always possible to relieve suffering. Allowing terminally ill people to determine the timing and manner of their deaths is a compassionate response to unbearable suffering. Even though morphine and other heavy pain relievers may dull a patient's pain enough for it to be physically bearable, oftentimes in doses heavy enough to dull such pain, it leaves them in a state that they don't want to live the rest of their lives in. To quote the president of Compassion and Choices, Barbara Coombs-Lee, for some patients, ending their life in unconsciousness and bargaining away the conscious mind for relief from pain is an unacceptable bargain. It's hard to spend your last months with loved ones if you aren't conscious, and when you are conscious, you aren't coherent enough to understand what's going on around you. Right now, the terminally ill are stuck without the ability to end their lives between 2 sections of the population who have those rights. According to Erwin Chemerinsky, law professor at UC Irvine, the prohibition of physician-assisted suicide especially affects those who are not on life support and are physically too weak to commit suicide. Those on artificial life support can order ended. The law is clear that competent adults have the right to refuse medical care, even life-saving medical care, and those with the physical capability to do so can commit suicide. But a person in this scenario who desperately wants to end their suffering is left with no alternatives. The issue should be addressed now because in light of recently revived interest in the legal standing of physician-assisted suicide, many states have drafted their own versions of death with dignity laws to be voted on in state legislatures in the future. And as of November 13th, New Jersey joined 5 other states in passing death with dignity laws. With a growing patchwork of states with laws on the books on this issue, there grows a demand for federal law to provide uniform rights for the terminally ill across the country. Not every terminally ill person has the means and ability to move to and acquire residency in one of the 6 states that permit physician-assisted suicide, which means that somebody with terminal cancer here in California does not have the same options to respond to their prognosis as the same terminally ill cancer patient would if they lived in, for example, Vermont. Reverend Ignacio Castuera said that he thinks the gathering storm of baby boomers are likely to want to make such personal choices when they are near the end. And according to the Los Angeles Times, 2/3 of those polled were in favor of the Death with Dignity Act. An adult of sound mind and judgment should have the right to end their life how and when they want, especially when faced with an illness that will cause them great pain and result in their death. In fact, New Mexico Judge Nan G. Nash, in New Mexico's ruling on assisted suicide, said, this court cannot envision a right more fundamental, more private, or more integral to the liberty, safety, and happiness of a New Mexican than the right of a competent, terminally ill patient to choose aid in dying. As a society, we currently have legal precedents that state an adult may end their life. For example, suicide has been decriminalized in the United States, so if one wants to end their life, they are not technically breaking any laws to do so. And you can abstain from life-saving or prolonging medical measures if you wish. If you have a doctor write you a do not resuscitate order, you are saying that in case my heart stops or I stop breathing, I don't want anyone to perform CPR in order to save my life. You may also sign documents that say if you require life-supporting measures, such as feeding tubes, you would like those measures turned off. and you to starve to death. If it is morally acceptable to allow competent adults to end their life if they are on life support measures or if they stop breathing, it is also reasonable to say that it is morally acceptable to allow competent adults to end their life if they have terminal illnesses. Currently, if they are on a feeding tube, they have the right to refuse food and starve to death over the course of days, but not end their life more humanely, quicker, and without the need to suffer starvation in order to end their suffering. Currently, people do not die where they want either. According to the California Healthcare Foundation, 67% of Californians want to die in their home, and only 18 want to die in a hospital, while 47% end up dying in a hospital, only 26 at home. Allowing terminally ill people the ability to end their lives where they please would help change these numbers towards less of a disparity. To prevent other people from having similar physical and emotional suffering and indignities during their final months, I believe the United States should adopt Oregon's model of the Death with Dignity Act. Oregon's Death with Dignity Act allows Oregon citizens with terminal illnesses and a prognosis of 6 months or less to live the ability to ask their physician for drugs in which to end their life. To quote Lois Snyder and Daniel Solmancy of the Annals of Internal Medicine, some aspects of suffering cannot be satisfactorily controlled with standard medical interventions. Physician-assisted suicide, in this view, is an act of compassion that respects patient choice and fulfills obligation of non-abandonment. There are several safeguards written into the Oregon bill to prevent abuse of the law. The patient has to ask for the drugs multiple times over the course of at least 15 days so that there is a waiting period and a patient doesn't end their life on a whim. The physician is not forced to procure these drugs, so if they are morally opposed, they don't have to break those morals. And once the patient has them, they're not required to take them. In fact, as of 2012, if the patient is believed to be suffering from depression or other mental illnesses that may influence their decision-making process, they are referred to psychological evaluation instead of given the drugs. To prevent family members or others from strong-arming their terminally ill relative into killing themselves, the forms require signatures from 2 separate people, one of whom, quote, will not be a relative of the person signing the request, shall not be entitled to any portion of the person's estate upon death, and shall not operate or be employed at a healthcare facility where they are a patient or reside. That is Ms.